Got this marl clay caked on my soul, makes a good man feel ancient and old. These old palmettos hold the truth, yeah, these Florida years, they wear on you. That sunset bleeding orange and red, I reckon that's my story instead. Yeah, this is the real Florida you see, it's all of my history living in me.
Hey, y'all, I don't know if you know this or not, but the roads out towards Cholota, Florida, kind of got a way of feeling empty after dark. You know, just two-lane blacktop cutting through palmettos and quiet neighborhoods east of Orlando, where the frogs are louder than the traffic and the humidity hangs thick enough to choke you. And in January of 2019, one of them quiet Florida neighborhoods became the scene of one of the coldest family murders the state had seen in years. Because inside a suburban home sat Grant Amato, a man prosecutors said became so consumed by an online fantasy that he murdered his entire family just to protect it. Now, y'all, this story ain't just about murder. It's about obsession, about isolation, and about somebody losing themselves so deep inside the internet that real life stopped mattering. Now, Grant lived with his parents, Chad and Margaret, and his younger brother, Cody, in Cholota, Florida. And from the outside, they looked like a normal middle-class family and a nice house. They lived on a quiet street. No signs of the nightmare building inside that house. Now, Grant had worked as a nurse, but after being caught stealing medication from the hospital, of course, he lost his job. And that's when things really started to spiral. Unemployed and isolated, Grant became obsessed with a Bulgarian webcam model named Sylvie. He spent nearly every waking hour online talking to her, sending money, and pretending to be some successful professional gamer living a luxury lifestyle. The only thing was, none of it was real. Now, according to investigators, Grant stole more than $200,000 from his family's accounts trying to keep that fantasy alive. Now, y'all, just imagine being his parents, watching money disappear that they had worked so hard for, finding transfers and charges you didn't recognize, then realizing your own damn son had drained the family dry for somebody he never even truly met. But what makes this case tragic is the fact that they still tried helping him. Instead of throwing him out, the family reportedly paid thousands to send Grant to treatment for internet addiction. They wanted him better, and they wanted their son back. And for a little while, maybe they thought things were improving. But prosecutors later said Grant secretly continued contacting Sylvie anyway, hiding messages and using phones behind his family's back. But finally, his father, Chad, had had enough. No more contact. Get a damn job, pay the money back, or leave the house. It's simple as that. Only by then, prosecutors argued Grant cared more about the online world than the real world. On January the 25th, 2019, that's the day that everything ended. Now, according to prosecutors, Grant first shot his mother, Margaret, while she sat at the family computer. Then he waited. Hours later, Chad came home, and Grant allegedly shot him too. But the coldest part of this story, he still wasn't done. Investigators said Grant remained inside the house for hours, waiting for his younger brother, Cody, to return from work at the hospital. Now, y'all, just imagine that. Coming home after a long shift, walking through your own front door, and death waiting in the dark. Cody, he was killed moments after entering the home. Now, 3 members of the same family murdered inside one quiet Florida house. The prosecutors said Grant then tried staging the scene to look like Cody committed the murders before killing himself. But detectives quickly realized the evidence did not add up. The timeline was wrong, and the forensic evidence didn't fit. And then investigators uncovered something even more disturbing. Now, after the murders, Grant allegedly continued trying to access family money and online accounts connected to the webcam model. And that detail haunted people across the country because it made the obsession feel deeper than greed. It felt like complete emotional detachment from reality itself. Now, during the trial, prosecutors painted Grant as a man consumed by fantasy. Somebody willing to destroy his own family to keep alive the online persona he'd created. And the jurors, they heard about the stolen money, the hidden messages, financial records, and the digital trail investigators pieced together from phones and computers. And in modern crimes, that digital trail tells almost everything. Every login, every transfer, every message. And by the end of the trial, the jury convicted Grant Amato on 3 counts of first-degree murder. And he was sentenced to life in prison. No parole. Just concrete walls and fluorescent lights for the rest of his life. But what keeps this case alive years later is how modern it feels. This wasn't some mob hit or robbery gone wrong. It was a man disappearing into an online fantasy while the people around him desperately tried pulling him back. His family gave second chances, treatment, support, ultimatums, and none of it stopped what happened inside that house. And that's why the still gets talked about today. Because deep down, it taps into a fear people understand now more than ever. How far can somebody drift from reality before they stop seeing the people closest to them as human at all? And out there in quiet Central Florida, beneath the oak trees and heavy humid air, 3 people lost their lives because one man chose a fantasy glowing from a computer screen over the family sitting right beside him. All right, y'all, tonight we got a double story from the great state of Florida. This one here is called the Gator Hammock Killing. As you might know, and as you may not know, there are parts of Florida that tourists never see. Oh, they see the beaches, the palm trees, and the fancy condos, and the little drinks with umbrellas in them. But if you drive far enough south, past the gas stations and all the bait shops, past the orange groves where the mosquitoes sound like chainsaws, eventually you're going to find the real Florida, as we call here the old Florida. Swamp Florida. The kind of place where roads disappear into cypress trees, where folks keep generators year round, and where something can vanish in the water without ever coming back. And in the summer of 2004, down near a stretch of marsh locals called Gator Hammock, a man disappeared so completely folks started whispering about ghosts before police ever found a body. And his name was Travis Rains. Travis was 34 years old. He was a commercial fisherman. He was built like a tree stump, mean when he drank, and even meaner when he didn't. But Travis wasn't exactly loved around town. He owed people a lot of money, he had been arrested twice for fighting, and there were rumors he'd been running little side hustles out on the water at night. Nothing huge, Just enough shady business that people learned not to ask questions. But the one thing everybody agreed on, Travis knew those swamps better than anybody alive. Man could navigate flooded marshland in pitch black darkness with a cigarette hanging from his mouth and never did a stump. That's why his disappearance scared people. Because if Travis Rains got lost out there, anybody could. Now, the last person confirmed to see him alive was a waitress at a little seafood joint just outside Okeechobee. She said Travis came in around midnight, sweating through a shirt, nervous as hell, checking the windows every few minutes. He ordered blackened catfish and 3 beers. He never touched the food. And around 1 a.m., he got a phone call. Didn't say much, just listened. Then apparently, he looked pale as drywall. He stood up, tossed $40 on the table, and told the waitress, "If anybody asks, I was never here tonight." Then he walked straight out into the storm. And that was the last normal thing anybody ever saw of Travis Rains. Now, 2 days later, Travis's boat turned up drifting near the reeds. Engine was still running, wallet was still on board, and the beer was still cold in the cooler. But Travis, gone. Only thing strange deputies found was blood smeared near the back rail and deep scratches cut into the aluminum sides of the boat. At first, police figured a gator attack. Happens more than folks realize. But there was one problem. The blood on the boat wasn't enough for a fatal attack. And there were boot prints. 2 different sets. And that means that Travis hadn't been alone. And that's when rumors started spreading all the way through town. Folks talked about hearing airboats running late at night. Said strange lights were moving through the marsh after midnight. Some even swore they heard gunshots swallowed by thunder. And then came the story everybody remembered. An old hunter named Dale Mercer walked into the sheriff's office 3 days later looking like he'd seen Satan himself. Dale claimed he'd been checking hog traps near Gator Hammock when he spotted a lantern moving through the fog around dawn. At first, he thought it was a fisherman. Then he heard arguing, and one voice sounded like Travis, but the other voice he couldn't place. Dale said he crouched down in the reeds and watched 2 silhouettes dragging something heavy toward the water. And then he heard Travis scream, "You ain't got to do this." After that came one single gunshot and then silence. Dale, he waited nearly an hour before moving. Said he was too terrified to even breathe. When he finally walked over there, nothing remained except churned mud and one spent shotgun shell half buried in the swamp. Now, if y'all thought that was ugly, here's where the story gets really ugly. Because investigators eventually uncovered that Travis had been stealing from the wrong people. See, down around those waterways there were rumors of a smuggling route running through the marshes. Drugs, cash, illegal weapons. Fast, quiet boats slipping through places helicopters couldn't even track. And also, according to detectives, Travis had started skimming money off deliveries. Not a lot, but just enough to get noticed. You see, the problem with criminals in the swamp is there ain't cameras. There ain't no witnesses, and there ain't nowhere to run. And the swamp, well, it keeps its secrets. Weeks passed. Search crews found nothing except Travis's necklace tangled in mangroves nearly 6 miles from where his boat drifted. And then hurricane season hit. Heavy rain flooded everything. Most people figured the case was dead until a dog found the barrel. Now, 3 months later, after a storm ripped through the county, a hunting dog wandered off near a muddy canal bank and started barking at a rusted 55-gallon drum half buried in the muck. Deputies opened it the next morning, and inside was Travis Rains, bound in a chain and concrete around his legs. Sheriff later told reporters these folks wanted him gone permanently. But the swamp gave him back anyway. Now the investigation exploded. Phone records led detectives to another fisherman named Cody Vance. Now Cody, he had grown up with Travis, worked the same waters. They drank at the same bar. The folks said the two had recently been feuding hard over missing money. And when deputies questioned Cody, he acted calm at first, but he acted too calm. Then investigators searched his property, and behind his trailer they found mud-covered chains, burned clothing, and traces of blood in the bed of his truck. That should have been enough, but the real break came from an old woman named Mrs. Landry who lived alone near the marsh. She told detectives she heard an airboat around 3 a.m. the night Travis vanished. She said that wasn't unusual, but then she heard screaming. And after the screaming stopped, she heard somebody yell, "Gators will finish the rest." And that line right there, it haunted the entire county. Cody Vance was arrested 6 days later, and during interrogation, he finally cracked after nearly 9 hours. Not from guilt, from plain old exhaustion. He admitted Travis had stolen money from a smuggling crew moving product through the marshes. Said they only meant to scare him, but out on the water, things turned really violent. And according to Cody, Travis tried jumping overboard during the confrontation. One of the men shot him in the shoulder with a shotgun. Then they chained him into the barrel while he was still breathing. That confession turned people's stomachs. Even hardened deputies walked out of the room. But the worst part? Cody claimed Travis stayed alive inside that barrel for several minutes before finally drowning when they pushed it into the canal. Now, folks around Gator Hammock still talk about that story today. Some swear you can hear chains rattling in the marsh at night when the storms roll through. Others say it's just wind against old docks. But nobody fishes that canal after dark anymore. Not the locals, anyway. And old Mrs. Landry refused to leave her porch after sunset the rest of her life. She'd sit there with a shotgun across her lap, staring toward the swamp. Because in Florida, folks, water just don't hide alligators. Sometimes it hides what people are willing to do to each other when they think nobody's watching.